Hello, hello. Heute geht es wieder einmal rund um unser Bewusstsein. Genauer gesagt den Superconscious Flow, eine höhere Bewusstseinsebene und wie man diese erreichen kann. Denn für meine Buchrecherche, für die Flow-Formel, wollte ich noch einmal tiefer eintauchen in diese Bewusstseinsebene und da habe ich einen der führenden Experten in dem Bereich in die Flowgrade Show geholt und daher erstmal herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Folge der Flowgrade Show. Ich bin Max Gotzler und in diesem Podcast geht es rund um die menschliche, die persönliche Potenzialentfaltung. Also ich erforsche alle möglichen Methoden, Strategien und Wege, um mehr aus unserer Biologie herauszuholen, um mehr zu uns selbst zu finden, um unser Potenzial zu entfalten. Und hier schon mal die Einladung, denn wenn du die Szene, unsere Welt kennenlernen willst, dann ist der beste Weg zum Flowfest 2025 zu kommen, denn dabei geht es darum, dir dein bestes Leben zu erschaffen und zwar mit den bewährten alten Weisheiten, den neuen Methoden und den neuesten Technologien. Also wir bringen all das zusammen, um wirklich das aus dem Leben zu machen, was wir daraus machen wollen. Und es findet statt von 3. bis 6. Juli 2025 in München und alle Infos zu den Speakern zum Programm, das ich erst vor kurzem jetzt mal grob live geschaltet habe, findest du auf flowfest.de. Also sicher dir dein Ticket und sei im Juli mit dabei. Es wird sich lohnen. So, jetzt aber zur heutigen Folge. Es geht um das menschliche Potenzial. Und mein Gesprächspartner heute ist der international anerkannte Arzt Mark Atkinson. Ich stelle ihn mal kurz vor. Und zwar er ist Arzt für integrative Medizin, er ist funktioneller Mediziner, Meistercoach und einer der führenden Experten im Bereich der menschlichen Potenzialentfaltung. Er hat über 25 Jahre Erfahrung und er ist der Mitgründer unter anderem von Optimal Mind International und Schöpfer der Human Potential Coaching Ausbildung und mittlerweile auch der Gründer von der School of Biohacking. Auch darüber sprechen wir in der Folge. Dabei geht es um eine Longevity- und Biohacking-Zertifizierung auf Englisch. Und hier auch kurz der Hinweis, diese Episode ist auf Englisch. Vielleicht in Kürze gibt es mal auf den bewährten Tools eine Möglichkeit, die englischen Episoden auch zu transkribieren, sprich zu dubben, also dass die auch auf Deutsch angehört werden können. Allerdings diese ist noch auf Englisch. Ja, was kann ich dir über die Folge erzählen? Also wir sprechen über genau diesen Superconscious Flow, definieren erstmal, was dieser genau ist, wie du ihn im Alltag erfahren kannst und was ich besonders aus der Folge mitgenommen habe, und das wende ich tatsächlich selber an, sind einfache Techniken, die der Marc mir beibringt, um in einem stressigen Alltag, also wenn ich zum Beispiel an der Kaffeetheke stehe und mir wieder alle möglichen Gedanken kommen von Dingen, die ich noch nicht gemacht habe, die ich noch machen will, wie ich mich dann wieder in den Moment hole. Und das ist eine ganz einfache Technik und die wirst du kennenlernen in der Folge und du kannst sie dann sofort anwenden. Ziemlich cool. Dazu sprechen wir über Biohacking 3.0. Die zentrale Rolle des Nervensystems und wie du auch Glaubenssätze in dir erkennst und diese verändern kannst. Es geht um die 5 Stufen der menschlichen Entwicklung, die auf der Erfahrung von Marc basieren und vieles, vieles mehr. Also hör unbedingt rein. Und bevor wir jetzt gleich loslegen, noch ein Dankeschön an unseren Sponsor der heutigen Folge. Und zwar ist es auch unser Hauptsponsor vom Flowfest 2025. Das Event ist powered by Mitocare und Lila Quantum Tech. Und heute möchte ich dir nochmal was über Lila Quantum Tech erzählen, denn wenn es um den Superconscious Flow geht, dann finde ich das tatsächlich eine super spannende Firma. Warum? Sie machen Produkte, dabei geht es um Quantentechnologie, Quantenenergie, also diesen Quantenenergie geladen. Aber viel mehr als das, warum ich es so wertvoll finde, für mich fungieren sie als Öffner. Also ich habe hier die Heal-Kapsel um den Hals hängen, die ist gefüllt mit Titankügelchen und die sind geladen mit Frequenzen. Aber jenseits der Frequenzen finde ich es spannend, weil es mein Unterbewusstsein immer wieder daran erinnert, was eigentlich mein Ziel war. Was ich in der Vergangenheit schon gemacht habe, ist zum Beispiel Wünsche aufzuschreiben und diese in diese Kapsel zu drehen. Und was ich hier habe, für alle, die nur zuhören, ich halte gerade den Infinity-Block hier in die Kamera. Und zwar ist das auch ein Gerät von Lila Quantum Tech. Und darin kann man zum Beispiel seine Kaffeetasse aufladen und so weiter. Aber was ich mache, ich schreibe mir Karten. Hier habe ich zum Beispiel meinen Wunsch für heute. Warum habe ich heute einen fantastischen Tag? Also die Warum-Frage, schreib das bewusst auf und leg mir das rein. Und egal, ob du an Quantenenergie glaubst oder nicht, was es sicherlich macht, ist, dein Unterbewusstsein zu primen. Also sprich, du gibst einen Wunsch, der mit dir resoniert, in dieses öffnende, ich sag mal, Gerät hinein und damit erinnerst du dich immer wieder daran, was du eigentlich wolltest und ich sag dir fallen viel mehr Dinge auf. Je mehr ich in diesem Bereich aktiv bin und ich bin seit 10 Jahren aktiv, desto mehr bin ich davon überzeugt, unsere Methoden und Strategien funktionieren. Deswegen hier nochmal, kommt unbedingt zum Flowfest. Aber auch biologische Manifestation funktioniert. Sprich, wenn wir unserem Unterbewusstsein immer wieder Dinge sagen, immer uns wieder daran erinnern, was wir eigentlich haben wollten. Dann fallen uns andere Dinge ein, dann verbringen wir automatisch mehr Zeit an den Orten, mit den Menschen, die uns gut tun, die uns weiterbringen, die uns dabei helfen, ein Leben voller Flow zu erschaffen. Und daher schau dir gerne mal die Geräte an von Lila Quantum Tech auf lilac.de, also L-E-L-A-Q.de. Und wenn dir was gefällt, dann kauf es gerne. Und zwar mit dem Code Flowgrade 10 sparst du auch noch 10%. So, das war's für die Vorstellung von Lila. Jetzt ganz viel Spaß mit Mark Atkinson und dem Superconscious Flow. Go for Flow.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Be water, my friend.
3, 2, 1. Dear Mark, welcome to the Flowgrade Show.
Hey, Max. Thank you so much for having me. You and I are about to have a very interesting conversation.
Oh, I'm sure we will. I first witnessed you on stage in London, actually, and I came across your name, well, throughout my years in biohacking, I would say. And I'm very intrigued now to record the first episode with you because you're totally along my wavelength in terms of flow, how you look at life, how you want to help people to find their true potential and to live the life they always wanted. And I'm not sure if you're aware of, but I'm currently in the last stages of finishing my third book, which is called The Flow Formula. And so this episode is the perfect, like, final touch that I might be able to include into the book.
Absolutely. That's so good to hear. And, you know, of course, so much of what we're going to talk about and I'll teach around is, of course, reflected in my own personal journey. It always is, right? So, you know, when you're deeply committed to unfolding your potential, which basically means to be in touch with the self-actualizing impulse that's available to all of us when we know how to come out of our conditioned mind, then it takes you on this quite astonishing journey into what is possible for humanity. And really that has been the core of my kind of work for the last 20 years.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we want to dive into that a little more throughout the episode. First of all, I want to introduce our topic for today because, as you are aware of, everything I sort of touch has to do with flow. So my company is called Flowgrade, not Upgrade. The event series is called Flow Fest. My community is called Flow Tribe. So everything is around flow. But the first time I came across that term Superconscious Flow was when I got in touch with your work. And
Right.
So I would like to start the episode with knowing, how did you come to this topic? Or let's start with the definition. Like, what is superconscious flow?
Yeah, great. So superconscious flow is the direct experience of your superconscious nature. So the way of thinking of that is we habitually take ourselves to be this thought-based separate sense of self. And when you stop doing that, and you're no longer defined by your internal narratives and thoughts and thinking process, what you discover is beyond that thinking level is this open, spacious sense of presence that is our deeper nature. And when you live from that and you're in touch from that, you experience what I will call superconscious flow, which is the experience of reality organically unfolding as this. There's a simplicity about it. There's a spaciousness about it. But there is a whole entire journey to it. And that is what we can unpack through this call.
One question that just came to my mind, Mark, is around the book and the idea of fast thinking and slow thinking. I think that's the English title of that famous book by Daniel Kahneman. And he describes that state of fast thinking as a state of intuitive thinking, of not overthinking too much, but reacting more according to your intuition. Is that kind of what you mean with superconscious flow, or how would you differentiate
it? It would
that?
be a level beyond that because it's a very integrative state.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is you have full access to all of the capacities to consciously and intentionally reflect and access the capacity for reflection, but also simultaneously, there's a real sense of being able to intuitively respond to the needs of the present moment. So there's inherent flexibility. It's not locked into one particular pattern of perceiving reality. It has inherent flexibility. It's integrative. You could call it integrative consciousness, right? So what tends to happen is, and this is the way the human mind works, we like to divide everything up into this system and that system. And so you can get to a stage where your mind is trained to the degree to which you're able to consciously use the mind in a very flexible way, in a way that's orientated to what the present moment requires. So we go from what I can get from this present moment, which is I'm showing up and there's a whole bunch of things I want to get from you, I want to get from this moment, to actually showing up in the present moment is just like, what is this present moment asking of me? And how can I respond in a way that serves the present moment? So it takes this kind of very me-centered focus, which is a developmental stage we all go through, which is this is me, my life, my thoughts, my will, my desire, my intentions, me. It's a developmental stage. It's not a problem. But at some time in the developmental journey, that falls away. And what you become really interested in is what is emerging, what is unfolding, and if from a place deeply connected to that, serving the whole. And that changes everything. The interior experience changes, the mind goes quiet, you feel naturally more connected to things, you access this inner sense of felt knowing, there's a sense of smooth, organic unfolding. When there is drama and there is challenges, they tend to come and go very quickly. There tends to be a lot less drama at this stage of development. So what I teach is really rooted in this 5-stage developmental model, and superconscious flow is one of the consequences or the fruits of doing the inner development work and the inner healing work and the self-mastery work. And it is essentially a capacity that comes online at a certain stage of development.
I definitely want to dive into these 5 stages later on. But first of all, do you think we can find an everyday example? I'm just trying to give our listeners now an image that they can relate to. Let's say there's a person that goes to work and they might stop at their favorite cafe and they get their smoothie and their cafe. Like, how would they behave differently if they were in a state of superconscious flow?
Yeah, they wouldn't necessarily behave differently, but their experience would be very different. Okay, so their experience would be of ease. Maybe its defining feature is a sense of inner complete ease and presence. So there's an absence of internal conflict, absence of internal rushing, absence of internal stress. There's just this open, welcoming state of inner ease and presence. And the best way for anyone to experience this, and this is the core of what I teach, and we can all do this now, is to center ourselves in our lower belly. So what we discover is that our experience of reality is predominantly shaped by where we base our attention. Habitually, most adults will base their attention in the forehead. And when you base it there, it activates egoic consciousness. When you look out through your eyes, it fragments the world into me and not me. Then it will typically judge what it sees according to its programming conditioning. However, when you relocate your base and become centered, that all changes. And the way to do that, and as someone's listening to this, you can do this with me.
Amazing.
Soften your eyes. That's the first place. When you allow your eyes to go soft and you defocus, and without thinking, you just tune into the spaciousness all around you. So what's happening right now is we're relaxing the nervous system. So you just tune into the spaciousness. Next thing is you say welcome to your interior world 3 times silently. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And what you'll notice is immediately your breath will deepen. You'll get a sense of your awareness dropping into your body. And now what you're going to do is you're going to sink into your lower belly. If it helps, you can just place your hand there in your lower belly. And then without going back up to the front of the head to think, you keep your attention in your lower belly. Eyes soft, welcoming atmosphere on the inside. And then what happens is from here, when we're eyes open looking at reality, what you'll notice is if you haven't gone back to the front of the head to think, you're very present. There's a sense of internal stability. You're really in the present moment. There's a sense of clarity. What we're really connected to right now is the unfolding present moment. There's a sense of ease being here. There's a sense of responsiveness. This is how you state change into superconscious flow. So this is a state change. It's temporary, but it gives you a taste of it. The inner work and the developmental focus work is what over time brings about as a stage change. So this becomes your default. Because what will happen is, very quickly, most people will be pulled back up to the front of their head to start thinking again. It's not like they decided to do that, but they will naturally return to the gravitational pull of their thinking processes without choosing to do that. So when you learn how to train your mind, you can actually train it to be in this superconscious state of presence most of the time, but you have to do the inner work, and the inner work at its core is about shadow integration, resolving trauma held within the nervous system, and committing to live a life of integrity. And that means cleaning up the way you show up as a human being. And where you are struggling with addictions and compulsions, you get that necessary help and support to work through them. Because it turns out that life, which is existence, has at its heart, it's an intelligence that is both identity dismantling and integrity restoring. And it's just the way it is. And when you wise up to that and you see it to be true, then you can learn how to cooperate with it, which is in any given moment, we're being called to depth. Most of us live at the very surface level of the ocean. We're caught up in our thoughts. We're caught up in our narratives. We're caught up in our drama and our problems. We were never designed to live at the surface level of reality. It's kind of like living in the mansion and only choosing ever to live in your TV room, right?
Mm.
You're kidding me? You got a beautiful mansion. Why don't you go and explore it? And traditionally, this is the spiritual journey, right? To explore who you are beyond your everyday conceptions. And so this is really at the heart of it, which is we can state change by becoming present, by accessing a lower belly, or in martial arts, this is the lower dantian. It's our natural center of gravity. Right now, we're processing reality through our enteric or gut nervous system. And so what you notice from here, the mind goes quiet and still. So now we're tasting into what it feels like to be in superconscious presence. But until you've done the inner work and restored balance to the nervous system, and you've cleaned up your life, the way you live, returned to integrity, most people will immediately return to egoic consciousness and operate from that. And then they flip-flop between the states. So this is kind of why it's easy to access the state change. Anyone can do it. It's easy to learn. But the stage change is the developmental map, and that unfolds over years and requires a very sincere commitment to truth.
Okay, you
and to
just
reality.
answered a couple of questions I had, that this is just sort of the first step to, because it sounds so simple, to soften your eyes and to take a deep breath and to focus on your belly. But that is sort of like the prerequisite, as I understand, to then start doing the inner work. And that can take up 2 years, and it's quite intense.
Oh, yeah. Typically, and I've been, obviously this is a path that I've been living, exploring for a whole bunch of time. It's a messy path, right? It's deeply challenging at times. It's profoundly liberating at other times. It can be quite destructive in the sense of what we know developmentally is there's essentially two halves to life. There's the first half is about filling up, and that means accumulating ideas of who I am, what I'm about, what life is all about, what am I here to do, trying to build yourself up to be someone. But the second half of life, which typically starts showing up in our 30s or 40s, is about emptying out, right? So the developmental journey is always about emptying out, which is actually loosening our identification with all of our thoughts and our shoulds and our ideas, right? And so when someone goes through that, it's profoundly destabilizing. And so what happens for a lot of people is they tend to double down on control, right? But the first half of life is all about control. It's all about grasping. It's all about getting. It's about understanding, right? But the second half of life is about unlearning, unbecoming, surrendering, opening, dissolving, letting go, still fully engaged with life, but you're simultaneously opening up and receiving. It's much more of a receptive mode of consciousness. So those two halves of life that many people have written about, and for sure I've been teaching around for a long time, when you understand that to be a success in the first half of life is all about control, right? And really what I call biohacking 2.0 is rooted in control. It's all, how can I dial in and take control of all the different facets of my life and my being and my health and all of this? It's beautiful. It's a developmental stage. But at some stage, it starts to change. You still take care of yourself, but you start to soften and open to the realization that there is more to life than you think there is.
What I encountered too, being a diehard biohacker from pretty much the beginning of the movement, I noticed that taking control of my blood parameters and, my breathing and certain other things I can measure, like my brain waves, my blood pressure, my VO2 max, and so on, it only gets me so far. It doesn't solve the greater questions in life, because once you've done all of that, you think, okay, now I have maybe better health and more energy, but where I'm going to direct that energy to?
That's right. And that's what we call biohacking 3.0. Which is, the model I've developed, which is, okay, so you've dialed in your health, you got disposable energy, you've got good cognitive performance, fantastic, congratulations. What will you place it in service of? And what I would propose to people is you place it in service of your development and unfolding as a human being. And that means to wake up to the reality that for a long time, many of us have lived at the surface level of reality, right? And actually, the true journey of becoming fully human is about exploring our depths and our interior. And to do that, you have to be able to navigate and enter into your interior world. And that means entering into your mind through your emotions and your body, because there is a vast universe inside of there. And we must learn how to enter that inner ocean and navigate it skillfully, because that really is where the true fulfillment comes from. And that ocean, that inner ocean, is our superconscious nature. And see, in the first half of life, we kind of live on the beach, right? Looking out of the ocean, sensing into the possibilities and potential of the ocean, and we're in awe of the ocean, and we can meditate on the beach and feel oceanness and feel calm and kid ourselves that we're developing spiritually. No, you got to get into the ocean. To know the ocean, you got to get into the ocean, right? And that requires the skills to come out of the thinking conceptual mind into reality. That's what we did by breathing into our lower belly. You're placing yourself in the ocean. And now you can start, typically with a guide, start exploring who you are. And that is the true journey. And for that, we need to start letting go. So Biohacking 2.0 is all about taking control and personal responsibility, which is, and it's a beautiful thing, because most people live in victim consciousness, right? They kind of do what they do because that's what they think they should do. They don't take good care of their health. They don't realize they can impact their relationships by learning how to be more emotionally intelligent. So it's all about personal responsibility in Biohacking 2.0, or the first half of life. But the second half of life, it's a different set of rules entirely. it's about active surrender. And active surrender is I'm willing to show up and do whatever is required to do the inner work while simultaneously letting go. And how do you let go? You soften. You somatically soften. You soft eyes, you soften your heart, you soften your belly, you open up. So you're engaging here in life, but you're letting go. And anytime you move into rigidity and control, you see it, you smile, and you soften. So what gets you to where you are in the first half of life, that actually then precludes you from then moving towards the second half of life because it's a different set of rules. And so one of the beautiful things I find myself, and having taught this to a lot of people, is most people, when they hear this, intuitively resonate and get it, and are kind of relieved because it kind of feeds back to them. Yeah, I've dialed in all these different elements, my health and my performance and this or that, but I remain unfulfilled. I remain disconnected. I struggle so in my relationships. I don't have the kind of sense of connection to the whole, right? So what that is about, what do I need to do? Am I going to go and train my brain even more to access it? And absolutely, neurofeedback particularly can be a pathway. But what is more important is humility, openness to experience, and a willingness to explore what is true. So rather than what is right, what is the answer, is just like, no, what is true in this moment? What is true within my experience? What is true within this relationship? What was true within my life? You keep orientated towards what is true. That becomes the guiding principle. And at the same time, you need self-kindness. There must be the presence of self-kindness. We must create internal safety, which is why when I said before about messaging welcoming to our interior, safety must be perceived by the body's nervous system in order to relax and allow you to remain within presence. And if we have a strong inner critic, or we're constantly caught up in drama creating problems, or we're pushing away our emotions, or we're saying no to what is true within our experience, we are rejecting the truth of reality. That places us in survival mode and keeps us stuck and unable to grow and develop. So creating internal safety, as I teach it, really is the first master practice for when you're called to kind of move on to this path of development.
Yeah, I can very much relate to that point because even I, who deals with various different methods and strategies all the time to calm down my nervous system, and I think the nervous system is actually one of the biggest culprits nowadays to damage us. Also, when it comes to longevity, when being healthy, when sleeping well, when having healthy relationships. And I struggle oftentimes with that to bring me into the moment because actually everything is going well, like the company's going well, the relationship's going well. And still I find myself in this state of unease where I might just get a coffee around the corner and I think about all these different things or expectations that are out there or things that I still have to deliver or want to do in the future. And I realize that, but it's really hard then to shut that off.
Yeah, right. But what we want to do is we want to welcome it. So what tends to happen, we're in the first stage of life, it's all about black or white, control, fix, stop, etc. We always want to turn towards it and welcome it in an authentic way. And so the core master practice that I teach is called always welcoming. And what it means is, this is another experiment that someone listening to this can do as you're listening to this. So we'll do an experiment together, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you to say these 3 words, and if you can, say it out loud. And when you say these 3 words, I want you to say them as though you're speaking to every part of your body and being. So you're just messaging your interior world and your body these 3 words, and I want you to notice what happens to your breathing and the way you feel. Okay, should we do this?
Yes, for sure.
The words are no, 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 So just repeat that 3 times and notice what happens.
No, no, no.
What happened to your breathing?
Kind of like became shorter, I would say, a bit more
Right.
stuck.
Exactly. So it either stops or it becomes very shallow. And then notice where your sense of self is. It tends to be more in the head. And then notice what happened to your energy.
Yeah, it feels stuck, not free-flowing anymore.
It feels stuck. There's no free flowing, right? So there's an absence of aliveness, there's an absence of flow, etc. So most people, most adults at least, live in a habitual state of no. They are messaging no to their internal reality. No, I don't want this to be the way it is. I do not want to feel this way. I do not want my life situation to be this way. No, that person shouldn't have said that, or that person should have done that. It's a constant messaging of no. What that does, the nervous system of the body is cued that there is a problem here. So this is a survival situation, and it puts us into alert survival focus. So here's the antidote. We practiced this before, and there's 2 ways of doing this. So now notice what happens when we say, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Very good. So what just happened to your breathing and to your energy?
Yeah, it feels like my face almost is widening a little bit because I also start smiling now or opening up more. So yeah, there's some flow back. I would say I probably could say it a couple of times more.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, we'll get to the second part of this. So you'll notice it's more expansive. There's a natural deepening of the breath here. Okay, so that's one way. You know, when you go and see a friend and you knock on their front door, how do you know you're being welcomed by them? They kind of smile at you and they say, "Hey, great to see you," etc. But the way that we really know when someone's welcoming us is in the smile. So the next practice is the practice of inner smile. And so this is a particularly good one to do even if we don't feel like we want to do it, because we want to be in charge of our nervous system, right? So here's what you do is you just breathe into the center of the heart and you allow an inner smile to expand. If it helps, you can keep your eyes closed. You allow inner smiling, and you allow that inner smile to expand from the heart to the face, into the eyes, as you sink into and relax and soften your lower belly. And with a little bit of practice, you can literally become inner smiling, present and expanding and filling your interior world. Now, whilst you allow that to continue, just open your eyes whilst inner smiling continues to be present. How do you feel now?
Lighter.
Very good.
I would say, yeah, more. Yeah, it starts opening up more and more. It's like the smile widens your aura in a way.
It does, exactly right. So what's happening now is your sense of presence is expanding. And you've noticed that you've relocated your sense of self from up here into your body and your whole being, that you're naturally in a state of presence. So here's where we want to be. Our core master practice that I teach is always welcoming. It's like, regardless of what is happening in your life, you have the master control switch for your nervous system by creating the inner conditions of always welcoming. So as I go about my day, and you know, I've taught this to a lot of people now, you're always welcoming. And you can either do that verbally, just like we started off with, which is welcome, welcome, welcome. So say you have anxiety come up, right? Or you have a narrative or drama or something unpleasant is happening and there's a story there. First thing you do is you just sincerely, it has to be sincere. That means to come from the heart to welcome it. But the deeper practice is you allow the inner smile. And here's the thing, in a very short period of time, normally a couple of days, you can train the capacity of your nervous system to generate and maintain and deepen, intensify this inner smile. So it can actually become really quite blissful, right? And then what we realize is, so it's not just a little smile or a little smirk. It's actually, oh my gosh, when I'm deeply in the experience of inner smiling, there's ease, there's joy, there's bliss, there's a real sense of beingness, a real sense of okayness. Eyes open, the life situation is still exactly the same, but I've retrained, took charge of my nervous system and my state, so that regardless of what happens in life, regardless of what shows up inside me, how difficult this is, I am able to always welcome it, and in that, access my deeper nature simultaneously in the presence of anxiety or fear or anger or agitation. So that's why I call this the core master practice. And then you kind of build the practices from that. But the clue is in the title, which is always welcoming. And that's the kind of challenge, because for a lot of people, they go from habitually not welcoming, which means constantly making the moment wrong, constantly pushing down what is true. And where we want to get to is we're so much more interested in welcoming what is true first. So what is true? How do I really feel about this situation? I feel disappointed. You welcome that. And then what you realize is you do not therefore become victimized by it, because that's the fear, right? So all of us positive people out there who are always kind of upbeat, right? We have a positive slant on kind of life and stuff. Our pathway tends to be to welcome what is true at a deeper level. But then you can then work within the way in which it becomes a gateway into presence. And there's other practices for that. So inner welcoming, creating internal safety, is the foundational practice for when someone is ready to take charge of their nervous system and do the developmental work. Because the developmental or inner work is challenging. It brings up a lot of repressed, suppressed emotions. All of the exiled parts of our personality system that we've pushed down, that live in the basement of the mansion we live in, they start popping up, and they will not come up and cannot be integrated if they are not welcomed. We must unconditionally welcome all parts of us. And what we're doing is we're expanding our bandwidth of allowable experience from, I only allow a tiny aspect of life. That could be, I allow a little bit of anxiety, I allow a little bit of gratitude, but I don't do anger, I don't do sadness, I don't do regret, I don't do vulnerability, I don't do joy, I don't do love. What we're doing is we're learning to expand the bandwidth of allowable experience to unconditionality. And then when you're unconditionally welcoming of the truth of reality, so you open to life, so you open to superconscious nature. But this reconditioning takes a lot of time and patience, typically 10 to 20 years. That's how much conditioning we have inside of our body-mind system. So you got to be kind of pretty sincere and committed to doing the work.
But Mark, let me ask you, because I know there are some jokesters out there that might say, okay, but when I now start welcoming my Instagram feed or my Netflix and everything that kind of gives me these dopamine kicks, then that obviously doesn't lead me on the right way. So how do you differentiate from things that you might want to distance yourself from? Or is it that you welcome a certain state so that you automatically start resisting some of those temptations out there? So I think I very, very much resonate. I just want to clarify what we are actually welcoming.
You're welcoming the truth of your felt internal experience. And for that, you have to have awareness of what your internal experience is. For that, you have to have developed the capacity for interoception, which is to know what you're experiencing within the body, within the present moment. If someone lives habitually from what I call the cave, the front of their head, they're caught up in their thinking, they will have no idea what they're experiencing in the body. Because we go to the cave to escape direct experience. That's why a lot of people live in their heads. It's a place of pseudo safety we went to at some stage in the past because our life experience was too much to bear and experience. So we go there because thinking and connecting are anti-correlated. So the more we are caught up in our thinking, the less our capacity to connect into what we are feeling, and the less our capacity to connect into our experience of connection to another human being. You can't think and connect at the same time. The different modes of perceiving reality. So most people are habitually stuck in thinking, and that precludes them from connecting.
I would like to ask you also about the situation, which I know very well, and I think it relates to that, which is oftentimes when I'm alone at home, because my partner, my fiance, she's in Copenhagen at the moment, and so I'm in Munich, and so we spend time apart. And when she's there, I actually tend to calm down much easier. And when she's not there, I find myself also distracting myself with a new TV series, or, also my social media, or even work, or doing something. And even though deep down I know this is wrong, like I should sit in the silence right now, and then I would actually know that, okay, actually it would be better to maybe even do a meditation, then go to bed, or turn on my infrared sauna and do a session there and relax. And even though I know it's true, and it leads me to something you said before, and I would like to you actually to define that, because you said living with integrity. And I have a hard time sometimes defining that, what that actually means. And maybe we can also, you can give some advice of how you can break that pattern in that moment when you kind of know deep down you're not doing something healthy, or not something which is aligned with your true self, but you just can't break out of that.
Very good. Okay. Well, amazingly, this takes us on to the second master practice I teach, which is how to reshape that. Okay. Because, and you'll see there's a natural intuitive ordering of these practices as I share them. It starts with always welcoming, which is, to clarify, it's creating a welcoming, internal, safe experience and welcoming what you're feeling moment by moment. But what you just described is this. There are a whole bunch of conditioned patterns operating in your body-mind system that sometimes move you in the direction you do want to go. So part of you is, I sense I should be meditating or taking better care of myself, but it just doesn't happen, right? There's some programming that kind of takes over, and then I'm just acting out the programming, right? So this is part of the inner work. And so the second core master practice I teach is called pause and shift. And here's how we do it. When we notice we're caught up in a pattern of thinking or behaving that is not helpful, that's potentially harmful, that is not alignment with our highest intention for us, we put pause on it. So literally in the moment of seeing it, you say the word pause, and then you center yourself in your lower belly. So pause, soft eyes, great welcoming, breathe into your lower belly. And as you breathe into your lower belly, what happens is you shift to what I call above the line. So in any moment, we're either below the line, which means caught up in our conditioning, in our stories, in our programming, acting out behavioral patterns that we haven't necessarily consciously chosen, or we're above the line when we're in presence, openness, clarity. So you pause, you shift into your lower belly, you move above the line, and from presence, you then proceed. So it's basically a pattern interrupt, right? So we're pattern interrupting. Because what's happening is when you're watching whatever you're watching, Netflix, whatever it is, you're not in charge anymore, right? There's a conditioned pattern that's taken over that's running the show, and it creates dissonance inside of you because what it's doing, it's conflicting with a deeper sense of what would be nurturing and supportive to you. But we're kind of caught up in it. It has a gravitational pull of its own. It's automatic, right? So so when it happens next time, in the moment of seeing it, you smile, you soften, you sink into your lower belly, you center yourself in presence, and from there, you then choose what you do. And I've used this in the early days of using this. What I would do is I'd shift, then I just turn the TV off. And you know what? It feels like you're coming out of a spell because that's what a conditioned
Mhm.
program is. It is a spell. And our conditioning and our beliefs are like spells. And you only realize they're spells when you come out of them and you look back and go, oh my gosh, I was
Mhm.
unconscious. It was in charge of me.
I had
So
that
that is
before.
the practice of pause and shift.
Yeah. No, very powerful, because I've noticed that too, when I sometimes manage to do actually what resonates with me in that moment. You're completely right. It feels like there was a spell
Yeah.
on you.
Oh, it is. Yeah. So another way of saying this, it becomes self-evident at a stage in your development that for the majority of our adult life, we were living from and within a series of spells. Because when you come out of them, it's like, I can see, I feel freer. This is the truth. This is what it feels like to be me. And when you look back at what was happening, it was like, oh my gosh, I was just acting out the spell. And this is why the inner work is not just about creating internal safety. It's not just about reconditioning the default patterns of our nervous system and our behavior. It's about learning how to process our emotional charge that sits inside of our body. And the way I describe it is, anytime we deny or push down our emotions, it's like holding a beach ball underwater. It requires a lot of life force energy to do that. By the time you get into your 30s and 40s, boys, there are a lot of stuff we're holding down. All that stuff has to be decompressed and processed. So we have to do the emotional integration work, and we have to do the belief work. So one of the next master practices is how to work with your book of beliefs. And your book of beliefs is this internal book that we have, which is full of beliefs about our body, our purpose, who I am, what I'm really about, what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing. Then we have beliefs about others. My belief about my partner is they should be doing that. They shouldn't be doing this. We operate from this book of beliefs. We have an internal critic that is monitoring as to whether we're aligned with it or not, and it will give us feedback when we're out of integrity with it. And one of the most powerful transformational work is when you start systematically working through the book of beliefs and start releasing them from your identity. And then when you do that, and there's a whole bunch of practices I teach for that, then you're no longer operating from the spells, right? And most people have at their heart, and anyone who's done inner development work knows this, a belief of, I am not good enough. I am not lovable. And when you come out of that belief, it's like it changes everything. It's like, oh my gosh, I no longer need to prove to the world that I'm lovable. I no longer have to achieve in order to get people's adoration, because I'm free. Now I can still do what I do, but I'm not trying to do it to get a response from the world. I'm now free to be me, and I'm free to do what I need to do. But it's not to get a response from the world, to prove to the world and to myself that I'm okay, that I am worthy. And there's a lot of freedom in that.
Mm. Yeah, wow. I mean, when you say that, I think then the question comes up, how do I even start dealing with my book of beliefs and all my inner demons and my trouble? And I know you have the so-called PF5 framework, and I wanted to know, is that then what
Yes, it
you
is.
recommend to
Yeah, absolutely.
start dealing?
We have a program through the School of Biohacking called Thrive Unlimited, which is the 35-day program that takes everyone exactly through the terrain I've just talked about. And that is also part of our optimal health, longevity, biohacking certification. So we teach people how to be biohacking coaches, optimal health, longevity specialists, but it's built around this Thrive Unlimited program, which is built around the 5 pillars. And so if you could think of everything we've discussed so far, the map is the 5 pillars. At the bottom of it, you've got self-care. Then you have self-optimization. So biohacking is really all about, biohacking 2.0 is about self-optimization. But then you have self-mastery, which is what we've just been exploring, which is how you skillfully work with your mind, your nervous system, and your emotions. That's what you and I are doing. And that provides the bridge to do the inner work in service of the final 2 pillars, which is self-actualization, which is the unfolding and living of your highest potential and engagement with the world. and self-transcendence, which is the identity shift from a thought-based, me-centered, apparently separate entity called me, which gets activated when I'm in the front of my head, to an awareness-based, living presence, innate to which is the experience of superconscious flow. That's self-transcendence. And you want to be, and this is my human development teaching model, you want to be working on all 5 levels and pillars. Now, biohackers are expert in self-optimization. But where they sometimes miss out is not building it on solid self-care. You must start with self-care. And that starts with having a caring relationship to you and your body, which is about self-acceptance. So in Thrive Unlimited, I take people through a 3-level program of self-acceptance because that really is the core. Then you naturally care about the self and your body. Then you can fine-tune aspects of self-care through self-optimization. Then you learn how to work with your body, your mind, your emotions in service of your development and in service of the awakening process. So that's the integral kind of model of development that really sits at the heart of my teachings and the programs.
Yeah, you just touched on that program that I'm aware of, which is, the biohacking program. It's the School of Biohacking, and you're certifying biohackers as well. But that leads me to the question, because when I hear you talk, like, how important is that physical biohacking in the end when it comes to becoming that being in super conscious flow, being integrated with yourself, being awake? Because sometimes I struggle with that because I'm a biohacker, and I always say that biohacking for me is kind of the toolbox for methods and strategies in order to change my biochemistry and then get quicker to a state that I want to get, or to influence my health positively. Like you said, oftentimes it's translated as a form of health optimization or self-optimization. But is it for you the foundation in order to really then become the person that you already are deep down?
It's an important part of it, but it's not the foundation. Because there's plenty of people who have, and when people talk about self-optimization, they tend to talk about and think about the body. It's very kind of body-centered, right? And, from my mind, it's like self-optimization. It's your whole body and being, and it's your mind, your emotional health, it's cognitive, all that kind of stuff. It's important, but it's not everything. And what we don't want to do is to fall into a blind alley, which is we just remain stuck in optimization, disconnected from the pursuit of self-actualization, because that really is where the fulfillment comes from. Now, there are a whole bunch of people, and I know them, who have woke up to reality and they're operating from the superconscious nature, but they're really unhealthy. Hormones are all over the place. The diet's atrocious. They're metabolically unhealthy, right? And in my mind, it's like, if we're committed to our development, you want to develop and refine and work on all the dimensions of you equally. I don't prioritize any above the other. So self-care equal to self-optimization, to self-mastery, actualization, transcendent. We may have periods of time where we focus particularly on a particular pillar, but where we want to get to is where they are balanced and integrated and functioning as a whole. Because our quality of life is, of course, profoundly shaped by what's going on in our hormones and our metabolic health, right? And also our relationships. So we want balance between all of those. And the big clue that someone is out of balance is when someone over focuses on the physical body at the expense of their interior world, their emotional, their mental health, and their spiritual kind of journey. And I see it all the time. So when we get over focus on supplementation, over focus on body aesthetics, it's good to be caring about it, but a lot of people who are over focusing on it aren't in a caring relationship to themselves. They're actually being driven by self-rejection to aspire to an image that possibly is non-satiating. So it doesn't matter how far they develop themselves physically, they never get to a place of satiation and fulfillment. And I say to people is the best way to know where you're at developmentally is how much inner ease, joy you have available to you in any given moment. That will reflect back to you where you are developmentally and how trusting you are in the process of life and how well you're caring for yourself and for your relationships and for your loved ones. If caring is present, inner ease is present most of the time, joy is readily available, then, you've done some good inner work there, or you've been blessed through grace to experience those kind of things. That's where you want to be. You see a lot of people caught up in self-optimization and biohacking 2.0. They're agitated. And of course I was. So I'm speaking from experience, right? I know the terrain. I know the people. I've been in, I worked alongside Dave Asprey for 5-6 years. So I know that world really well. But they're agitated. There's a higher level of discontentment. There's the perpetual pursuit of the new, novel, and shiny. And there's an absence of inner ease and wholeness, right? An absence of a fundamental sense of, I'm okay.
So how do you bring those two together? Like that, because on the one hand, we want to be healthy. We want to live long and, healthy lives with a high quality of life in the end, until the end.
Yes.
With healthy relationships and so on. And right now, it's also intriguing to me because when you look at the industry, the people that do biohacking and longevity, at least at this point, are not the people necessarily that have these long and healthy lives. At
right.
the moment, it's those.
Yeah.
I mean, the Harvard study has shown that it's the people with healthiest relationships and the strongest social circles.
Yeah.
It's the people on these islands and integrated with nature and in their daily routine, spending time outside, not too stressed, but a little bit of stress and good relaxation methods, but which are integrated. They don't seem to think about optimizing their lives, but they are the healthiest and who live the longest. And now we as biohackers, we're trying to take control of these aspects, but somehow what you just described, we tend then to go into this direction. And you just mentioned a name of, pretty much the self-declared father of biohacking, which came up with the whole term, or at least the interpretation behind that term in the lifestyle segment. But I know those people too. And I can completely agree with you that many of them, which are probably the most visible, are deep down not at ease. They're discontented. They're still striving for more success. They want to be seen. I have sometimes trouble bringing those two together. And I question myself that sometimes maybe I should leave behind that in order to take the next step. But you seem to be trying to bring that together or succeed.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's what I feel my role is, to help evolve biohacking from 2.0, which is self-care, self-optimization, to 3.0, which is self-mastery, actualization, transcendence. So basically, because you see, there's so much interest in biohacking and it's fantastic. And the reason there's a lot of interest is that it really draws people who want to be proactive, right? And they have a proactive can-do mindset. By definition, in the kind of model of development that I teach and created, they are at stage 3, which is the stage beyond where the majority of adults are at. So majority of our adults are in what I call conforming mind. So they're very socialized. So, they're programmed by society. They live according to society's norms, and they do what they're programmed to think that they should do. They aren't free thinking. In my mind, that's called victim consciousness, right? So whilst they may not be blaming, etc., they are victimized by their programming from their society and culture. They're just operating out their programming. Biohackers aren't in that class. They're in the next level, which is what you would call conscious mind or creative mind. They're trying to figure out what is true, what are my values, how can I take responsibility for my health, my life, my relationships, my success? What do I need to do that, right? So that's a beautiful stage of mind. However, Biohacking 2.0 over-focuses on the physical body at the expense of a more balanced, integral model of human health, which places equal weight on the cognitive, the emotional, and the mental health dimensions, right? So I'm coming along, not necessarily because I chose to do this, but it's just, my life path has drawn me to this, is to provide a much more balanced, integral model and how you can use the biohacking mindset and principles to more efficiently navigate these developmental tasks and how to improve the various aspects of health in a much more balanced, kind of grounded way. And what I'm finding is that at least the people who show up, to when I teach, they're very receptive to that and relieved in the way, because a figurehead or a celebrity can only take people as far as they have gone themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what you have in the biohacking movement is you have a very small number of very high profile people doing the best they can to share their journey and insights with others to inspire them, etc. However, it's always a reflection of the stage of consciousness, right? And so what we need for biohacking and for anyone into health optimization is to have a much more holistic understanding of how to develop themselves. And that's why the 5-pillar model came about, because it's balanced. It's integrated. I'm an integrated medicine doctor. I'm a functional medicine practitioner. I'm a biohacker. I'm a human potential teacher. I've had to navigate. It feels to me like the last 20 years of my personal life has been navigating this world to come back with a sensible, practical map to help people kind of move forward, develop these 5 pillars so they can relax a lot more into life. And what I say to people is, what the most important thing for you is to train the capacity to experience more joy and to live life more joyfully, regardless of what's going on. And the core of that capacity is grounded in inner safety, the practice of always welcoming, applying the pause and shift that I mentioned with you before, turning to work with your emotions and use your emotions as gateway. So that's another level that we won't have time to touch in today, but that's another level. But so you can get to a place where whatever your life looks like, whatever your life situation is, you're able to access a sense of okayness, joy, ease, regardless. And you live from there. And people get worried that, but maybe I won't be motivated to do what I do anymore, right? Because my motivational system is driven by either fear or a desire to accomplish, to conquer, whatever it is. And said it can bring a change in your motivational system because you do cease to care so much about achievement and doing this in order to be something. But here's the surprising thing. As you wake up to life will place you where you need to be doing the work that you need to do so that you can be the human being that you have the potential to be. And what you come to realize is it's much more about how you are in relationship. It's much more about how you are in this present moment. It's the quality of this present moment, the quality of our connection, the quality of what is emerging between us that is primary. Secondary is what we do. It's much more about how we are, our way of being, our state of being, than versus what we achieve, what we do. And when we really get that, then it's a bit of a game changer. And it's a relief, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It's still, for me, the question of how, like, it sounds to me a little bit like with biohacking that we have to kind of get the people where they are right now, which is
that's right,
at a state where they want to maybe improve a certain aspect of their health or their fitness. And then you get them there and then you lead them down the path, asking them maybe also the right questions, but then leading them towards self-mastery, I think what you called it.
Yeah.
What I also don't want to forget, Mark, is can you just quickly summarize these 5 stages again? Because we talked about them a lot. And just
yes, okay, let's do that. Yes, okay. So there's a lot of developmental models out there. So this is a composite that's emerged both from what I've learned about human development, but also the last 20 years of me teaching as a human potential teacher. And you can think of it as a map. to understand human psychospiritual development. And there's 5 core stages, each of which are really have very core characteristics. And stage 1 is what you could call egocentric mind or narcissist mind. And you've probably got about 5% of the population there. And when you're operating from that, you're completely absorbed in your thinking process and your conditioning. And the world is very much around, it's all centered around you. So, there's some very high profile examples right now of people out in the world who operate from egocentric mind. And basically the message is, I want what I want because I want it. Okay? And you, person out there that I'm looking at, you're either going to help me get it or I will go to war against you. And if you're not going to be able to help me get it, I will ignore you or I will take you down. That's the kind of egocentric kind of mind. And a lot of harm and destruction operates from that. And there can be a lot of manipulation. So it can look like very pseudo niceness, right? But ultimately, there's a lot of hidden agendas there. Now, fortunately, it's very rare to come across this in your actual life. But most of us know 1 or 2 people who are in that. Then the second level, which is where pretty much the majority of the population are at, is the conforming mind or socialized mind. And so this is people, the majority of adults, who have been programmed by their culture and society to think about a certain way and to be striving for achievement and success according to expectations of parents, of society, of this and that, right? And they're highly conditioned, highly programmed, and will tend to rarely go against societal cultural convention. Okay, so they tend to be very complicit. They tend to, so from a health perspective, these are the people who would either think there's not much they can do to improve their health, that they should listen to the government authorities as to how to improve their health. It's very mainstream stuff. Okay, This is where the majority of people are at. Then you have stage 3. So this is where anyone who's proactive around their health is. And this is conscious mind or creative mind. And this is, as I mentioned before, you're trying to figure out what's true, what's right for you. And you're taking responsibility for your health, your life, your relationships. And you're attempting to craft and shape a life centered around your values and your principles. So there's a lot of introspective work here. This is where self-awareness comes in, right? So those 3 stages are very much rooted in the first half of life, the filling up stage. And its highest, most healthy expression is to create a healthy, functional ego. Okay? So that means physically, metabolically healthy, emotionally and socially intelligent, a success in terms of functionality as a human being, as a business person, as a partner, as a father, as a mother, whatever it might be. Okay, so that is seen as the pinnacle of development, but that's just the first 3 stages. Then you have this transition to stage 4 that very few people will allow themselves to move into. And it gets precipitated typically by a destabilizing event or series of events. So it could be failure in a business venture. It could be heartbreak in a relationship. It could be unexpected loss. It could be a major health issue. It's basically when the rug gets pulled out from underneath your feet and you start questioning, who am I? What is life all about? You may have the external trappings of success, relationship, money in the bank, successful business. But like when you go inwards, there's like emptiness. There can be a lot of emotional pain. There can be grief. There can be angst. There could be inner conflict. And this typically is the start of the movement to stage 4, which is integral mind or vessel consciousness.
Integral mind.
Integral mind. And so at this stage, if we know that this is happening to us, and it really, ideally, you have a guide who knows this terrain, you learn to cooperate with it. So rather than trying to double down on controlling and improving your life situation, getting back to where you were, you will allow the heartbreak, the challenge to transform you. You allow yourself to be transformed. Classically, for me, my moment came when I was struggling with addictions, mental health challenges, and there was a moment in my life when I said to my wife, I cannot go on this way. I do not know what to do. And it corresponded with me having just being on TV, very well known here in the UK. So there was this simultaneous arising of deep pain, being unable to cope, and being in the public light that created the perfect storm. And it was in the moment of humility, which was, I said, I need help. I do not know what to do. And in that moment, it's now obvious to me, I didn't know at the time, I was being moved to stage 4. And stage 4 is about humility, opening up, and allowing yourself to be transformed. And then you consciously cooperate with it through the process of welcoming. You learn how to welcome what is. You learn how to welcome your pain, to work through the pain, and you're willing to get the necessary help and support. That's where the journey started. And then you move into integral mind, and at the core of that is a real sense of life, is this greater intelligence. It's in charge. So stage 3 is, I'm in charge. This is my life. We call this victor consciousness. It's my life to do as I wish. It's all me-centered. That's absolutely fine. But in stage 4, it's like, no.
You share.
Yeah, it's life belongs to life. Life's in charge. The whole ocean's in charge, right? It's in charge. And then your inquiry is much less about what do I want. It's much more about life. What would you have me do, and what would you have me become? And then that is where the process of identity dissolution starts to happen. Your sense of self starts to change and evolve and deepen and expand. All of your programming starts to come up to be worked with. All of your pain comes up to be worked with. And that is a path less traveled, but well marked out by many teachers and many authors. And then the final stage we could call optimal mind, or unity-informed integral mind, which is where your core identity is present. This open, spacious presence. That's your identity. And
how did you call it? Unity-formed?
Unity-informed integral mind. So unity, or the wholeness, is present, and it's almost like it's using your mind, right? So rather than in the early stages, essentially our programmed mind is using us, right? It's really, eventually it sees, like, oh my gosh, it's like, I wasn't in charge. My programmed mind was in charge of me. I was just acting it out. There was me thinking I was living consciously. Are you kidding me? At a certain stage of development, it's like, oh, okay. I was being lived by my programming. But when your identity is rooted in this open sense of still dynamic presence, the experience of superconscious flow, your kind of natural nature, and it is using your mind in service of the whole. That's stage 5. And at that stage, then there's a deep relaxation. And then you realize wherever someone is at, whatever stage, it's okay. Because in the early stages, you always want to get to the higher stages. But once you're taken to the highest stage, the sense of you kind of fundamentally falls away. And there's just a fundamental sense of everything as it is. It's okay. There's possibilities available to us, but no one has to do this work. Everyone has a unique path. There's no right or wrong. And you see with the book of beliefs, particularly as we become quite conscious, I should be more kind, I should be more present, I should be more loving, I should be thinking. that kind of starts to soften. You still take good care of yourself, but it doesn't come from a should. So that's the kind of 5-stage model. So when we come back to talking about superconscious flow, really what I'm talking about is a particular stage of consciousness development, stage 4 and 5, the experience of which is superconscious flow.
So how often do you manage to get into stage 5?
Well, here's the thing. At that stage, there's no separate self to get into it. That kind of separate self is just not there. There's just a sense of open, spacious awareness. So it no longer becomes a question. And then here's the thing. You will state change periodically into different stages. So say I get triggered and activated by something, I could go into stage 2, into victim again. Right? Not a problem. It doesn't bother me. It's all good. It's all fine. And occasionally I go into stage 1, right? But it kind of, happens kind of for, maybe 5 minutes, something like that. Very self-absorbed, but it's just a pattern. But I no longer make a problem of the pattern. It's just the clear seeing of it. It normally then spontaneously releases, not a problem. So the whole hierarchical thing of we should be progressing, it falls away the higher you go. And then there's so much more of an ease around where you are. But there's much more ease, there's much more joy, and there's a real sense of the separate self who perceives it has to change and evolve. You loosen around that. And there's just a much more deeper sense of being fundamentally okay with whatever's showing up inside of me right now. And that's okay. There's a lot of freedom in that. So it's a very paradoxical path, but it is an experiential path. You can't think your way to it. It's all rooted in direct life experience. But having mentored a lot of people through this, so where I coach and mentor people is people who are being transitioned from stage 3 to 4, right? So these are proactive, health-conscious people who are being woken up to reality and then navigating this, and that's my sweet spot for kind of coaching people. And there's a whole bunch of them out there.
That's true. Yeah. Like one last question to that model, because I think that in order to get to stage 5, also you almost have to then trust into some sort of higher power to let go completely and to be integrated with everything. So my question would be, now it becomes spiritual, but in that sense, like, what do you sort of believe in, even though you cannot prove it? What is behind all of that? What is the godly power that guides everything for you?
Yeah. So for me, all I can talk about is my direct experience and direct knowing, whilst at the same time, I can never extrapolate that to being true for anyone else.
That's what I'm trying to, this is super intriguing to me.
Yeah, right. So that's where we go wrong, which is, oh, wow, my direct knowing is this. It must be the same for you. I got no idea. I can know it's true for me. All I know is true for me is existence, the direct experience of existence as experienced through this body-mind. I experience is life. Okay? It's just life. And I experience life as an ocean. And I experience you and me as a wave of the ocean. We are the ocean waving. And what happened, I see in my early part of my life, was I was identified with being a separate wave. I experienced myself as being a separate wave. And I looked out through these eyes and I saw you as a wave. And then I would judge the wave of you according to my conditioning. I'm going to like you, I'm not going to like you, or this and that. It'd get very kind of heady. But as a separate wave, I experienced myself as completely separate from other waves and from the ocean. In the process of awakening and integration, in my experience, you wake up to a sense of simultaneously being the ocean, uniquely waving through Mark, the body-mind. So there's a sense of wholeness and connection. And so when I perceive reality and look from the ocean waving, I just see the ocean waving. Uniquely is you. There's no judgment about it. It is what it is. in the early stages, judgments would pop up, but they're quickly seen through. They're not taken seriously. It's just conditioning popping up. And then you feel this sense of connection and this kind of wholeness. So that's my kind of direct experience.
And then so the ocean would be sort of what we could describe maybe as God.
Yeah, you could call it God, you could call it life, you could call it existence. It's the whole, right?
Okay.
And so all and here's the other insight, which is just been fascinating to me. Our emotions, our emotional world, are waves of the ocean. And so actually the way into the ocean, at least the path that I've gone and been taken down, is through emotion. So I become so my last book was about emotions and emotional health through happiness. And it's like, oh my gosh, our emotions are the gateway. And we spend so much of our life medicating ourselves, distracting ourselves, projecting our emotions onto others, levitating above our emotions, controlling our emotions. And yet they're the gateway. And they become a gateway only when we welcome them. When we fight them and resist them, they close their door. It's in the welcoming of the emotional and our emotional experience, they open as a gateway and you can step through. And there's a whole bunch of practices for doing exactly that.
Wow, Mark, deep. Thank you very much for opening up so much and answering me these quite spiritual questions.
Yeah, my pleasure. That's awesome. No. I appreciate you creating the opportunity to kind of just explore this in the way you have. So thank you.
I love it, because I'm still trying to get the surfer who surfs sort of the waves of this ocean of life into the picture for me, because the surfer is being sort of the archetype for the flow state.
That's right. I'm aware of that. I'm very aware of that. And I think what it is about brilliant archetype for the flow state, learning how to ride the waves of life. But the next level for superconscious flow is to enter into the wave and the ocean. That's to
become the wave. So when the surfer becomes the wave, then he's sort of, great image. Wonderful. Wow, Mark, you gave me already a lot. Now, I know we've already spent some time, but for the remainder of the episode, I would like to talk a little bit about that program that you have created.
Yes, of course.
Because I think that's quite powerful, and I think that was sort of missing in our industry as well, like a trusted program created by professionals. And that's why it was also so important to me now to introduce you as that multifaceted. I wouldn't even know how to describe you, but because you're an integrative medicine doctor, but also sort of for me a mental coach, and more than that, like a holistic potential instructor. Yeah, instructor is not the right word, but you know what I mean.
I know exactly. I know what you mean, and part of this is it's my highest wish to bring to the world a very practical model of human development that meets people where they're at, that teaches them how to take good care of themselves in all ways, at all levels, is developmentally focused, but it is kind of contemporary and relevant. And so what we're offering through the School of Biohacking is this 14-week certification program. It's called the Optimal Health, Longevity, and Biohacking Certification, where someone can come complete the certification and then graduate either as an optimal health and longevity specialist or biohacking coach. Just depends on what's most helpful. And what I guide people through is this model, how to assess someone's level of health, subjectively, objectively, and we go into a lot around physical health and performance, because that really is where most people are interested in most. But we cover all of these other dimensions. And really importantly, I then teach how to. So I also used to run Dave Asprey's Bulletproof Training Institute, and I'm an accredited master coach. So I also teach people how to integrate coaching into what they do, right? Which is, you don't always have to have the answers. You can help your clients access their own answers. And boy, does that tend to better stick in terms of kind of empowering them to make decisions and change. And so we do a deep dive around what optimal health is, what true human thriving is, and then how to create personalized protocols based on specific outcomes for clients. So it could be more energy or sleep, resilience. We do a lot of work around longevity, cognitive performance, and body transformation as well. But we're using this kind of integral approach. And in the spirit of biohacking is very much, how can this be personalized and adapted over time to the client? And how can we help the client actually articulate in a very clear way what the outcome is they want and why it's important to them? Because sometimes we dive into things without really thinking about what's the ultimate outcome that they want. And the more that is clearly defined, then I'm teaching people how to build strategies, which are pathways to the outcomes, how to create measurable goals, and then what tactics, what are the behaviors and the actions and the habits that the client will need to imbibe in order to move towards that kind of outcome. So it's a very structured framework. And what I'm excited about is it brings everything that I have learned over the last 20 years and distilled to the essence. And we know the people who are already enrolled, and I've met quite a few of them, they are absolutely at stage 3, moving to stage 4. And I've really seen that, which is most of them are dialed in the physical health, but they do want to help others. And we actually teach and offer a blueprint as actually how to position yourself as a specialist. So what you find with a lot of health and wellness coaches is if you remain a generalist, it is really hard to develop a business and practice around what you do. People want to work with specialists. So we help anyone that comes in the program figure out, what will your expertise be? Will it be sleep? Will it be energy? Will it be longevity? Will it be weight loss? You've got to build it in around the specialism, and then you got to set up the funnel. Then you got to set up the automatic system to bring people to you and how to do that. There's a right way of kind of promoting yourself. So that's also really important. I did not want to create another training program where someone graduates and they can't earn money from it. So a big part of it is actually how to develop and build your practice around it. And, there's a lot more clinics now who are working with biohackers and people with biohacking knowledge to help build out their clinic. So I'm doing that some kind of work. There's hotels, there's spas, there's companies. I'm working with a few people who run biohacking retreats for executives. So we kind of cover how to do that. So it's ideal for someone who's passionate about health and biohacking, who's ready to kind of do a bit more deeper work on themselves, and wants to kind of earn a living, earn some money, kind of building a practice around doing that. So I'm pretty excited to be bringing it to people.
Great. Yeah, we'll for sure link for it in the show notes below the video, below the audio, and on the website as well. And one last question on that, like how long does it take? And is it online, offline, or
it's it's online, 14 weeks. And I struggle around this because part of me is like, I want to make it 2 years, right? Let's just do a deep dive. But I know how it is for most people. So it's the foundations are in 14 weeks. That provides you with the framework and enough to be competent. And then we'll build advanced trainings over time to go into a lot more of the detailed notes. But it's basically 14 weeks. It will actually be evergreen. So people can start at any given time. There's live training components. So, you come along to a coaching skills workshop that's by Zoom. That will be every other couple of months. So there's going to be a lot of flexibility to it. But it really is for the person who wants to take their health development to the next level and then kind of help others do the same.
Amazing. So all you stage 3 biohackers / health optimizers out there, there's a training program now where you can get certified in a structured and scientifically solid, proven way, and with additional methods and strategies in order to monetize also your content and to your coaching and attract the right clients and so on. And we'll link to that program. It's called if I get it right,
it's the Optimal Health, Longevity, and Biohacking Certification Program.
Optimal Health,
Longevity, and Biohacking Certification.
Longevity and Biohacking Certification. All right. Well, Mark, this was a pleasure. I hope that there are many interested people that can now get a sense of what you have to offer, and I'm sure they will. And this was just like in the beginning we started with touching the surface. I think we just touched the surface of what you have actually created in your life already, and what you have amassed in experience and strategies and tools. And now I'm very happy that there finally is someone who built a foundational framework around that, and that can help people out there to get to that next level. So thank you for that. And also thank you for sharing all these practical exercises today in the episode and all these insights. It was a pleasure. I hope you'll be back.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to come back. And you're right, we are just touching the surface. You can sense the volume of what is here, and the detail and nuance. But it has been an absolute pleasure to be able to cover what we have done. And thank you to you, Max, for doing the work that you do as well.
So last question, what is one activity that you really enjoy, that you're super excited about, that gets you into a super conscious flow state right away?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say just being in the presence of my children and my wife and our cats, right? And really just allowing myself to enjoy being with them. And you know, one of the practices we didn't touch on, which is when you really want to be connected and connecting to another human being or being, includes cats, dogs, whatever, be centered in your heart and look from there. And it is just such the exquisite thing. And I did a big project with Google Cloud where we trained 1,000 of their leaders in these practices that we cover today. And what we taught them was to really connect with another human being and to do your best collaborative work with others. Don't look at them from your head. Look at them from your heart, and then it changes everything. So that is, for me, the most important thing. It's a very, very simple thing. It's a very profound thing. And anyone can do this. Just like next time you're with someone else, rather than being up in the front of your head, thinking about them and you're all distracted, just breathe into the center of your heart. Keep your eyes soft, welcome on the inside, soft belly, and look at them from your heart. And it changes everything.
What a wonderful way to end this episode. Dear Mark, thank you very much. And I hope to see you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you, Max.
Go for Flow. So, das war's mit dieser Folge der Flowgrade Show. Vielen Dank, dass du wieder eingeschaltet hast. Ich hoffe, du hast wieder was gelernt. Diesmal über den Superconscious Flow, und zwar von dem fantastischen Mark Atkinson. Wenn dir die Flowgrade Show gefällt, dann freue ich mich natürlich über eine 5-Sterne-Bewertung auf Spotify, auf Apple Podcasts, ein Abonnement auf YouTube. All das hilft uns, noch mehr von den Dingen zu machen, um unser Potenzial zu entfalten. Denn darum geht es, ein Leben voller Flow zu erschaffen und alle Methoden und Techniken kennenzulernen, die uns zur Verfügung stehen, um mehr aus uns rauszuholen, um unser Potenzial zu entfalten, um unser Leben zu kreieren, so wie wir es haben wollen. Und der beste Weg, um all die Dinge kennenzulernen, um unsere Welt besser kennenzulernen, um tolle, gleichgesinnte Menschen mit tollen Frequenzen kennenzulernen, ist das Flowfest 2025. Und das findet statt von 3. bis 6. Juli. Es ist das Event. Es geht rund um Flow, aber es geht vor allem darum, dir dein bestes Leben zu erschaffen. Also mit bewährten Strategien, mit neuesten Technologien. Und all das findet statt beim Flowfest. Infos und Tickets findest du auf flowfest.de. Und wenn du mehr über Mark Atkinson und seine School of Biohacking erfahren willst, dann schau gerne mal in die Shownotes. Dort findest du den Link. Dort kannst du dich ausbilden lassen zu einem zertifizierten Longevity- und Biohacking-Coach auf Englisch. Ich bin ein Riesenfan von seiner Arbeit. Ich finde es super cool. Auch sein Geschäftspartner, der Eduard de Wilde, der uns seit Jahren unterstützt, von Live Healthy, wird vorbeikommen beim Flowfest. Auch dort kannst du Fragen stellen. Also schau gerne vorbei. Und ansonsten werde ich dich informieren, wenn mein Buch, die Flow-Formel, rauskommt. Denn diese Folge war ja unter anderem Recherche dazu. Auch das wirst du erfahren. So, habe ich noch irgendwas vergessen? Genau, ein Dankeschön. Und zwar an den Sponsor unserer heutigen Folge. Und das war Lila Quantum Tech, führender Anbieter für Produkte im Bereich der Quantentechnologie und Quantenenergie. Allerdings für mich sind das auch psychologische Öffner. Und wenn du dir einen Infinity-Block zu Hause hinstellen willst oder eine Heal-Kapsel umhängen, dann findest du diese auf lilac.de und mit dem Code Flowgrade10 sparst du auch noch 10%. Falls das zu schnell war, alle Links auch nochmal in den Shownotes, unter dem Video, unter dem Audio oder auf flowgrade.de. Ansonsten freue ich mich über jede Weiterempfehlung. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Ich bin Max Gotzler.